Hello. Welcome to another episode of Season 16 of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, the theme is B movies for C students. We're taking a break from the current trends toward elevated horror and examining the history of horror B movies and how they've developed over time. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
So I got a question to start this podcast off.
I'll allow it.
Is this the greatest movie of all time?
I have two things in my notes that are relevant to this.
Okay.
Number one, is Ed Wood the B movie MVP?
Yep.
Number two, all caps, perfect B movie.
Yeah. I had the same feeling watching it, man. I was just so happy. It's like, this is it. This is what we signed up for when it comes to B movies.
This is like exactly what was in my mind for like an old B movie.
Yeah.
So we definitely, I think, got thrown off a little bit by those first couple from the 30s. Mm-hmm. And even with Cat People, where the movie was being made still on like a major Hollywood set and decent quality, everything. It was just made, they weren't spending what they would spend on one of their like premier blockbuster type movies, but it still had access to the equipment and the people who know the craft of movie making, and they were just pretty solid and coherent. Then we got into The Living Ghost, which was way worse, but still it was like a movie house. You know what I mean? Like, these are professional movie makers who were in Hollywood making stuff to sell to the major studios. And then we get to Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah. Like the golden age of it, I feel like.
And this is completely outside of all of that. This is just a guy who wanted to make a movie and got money from a church to do it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Just, oh man. Yeah. Like, I have very little complaint about this film. But just that fact alone is just like, that's the coolest fucking guy in the world. Like,
well, it was an independent film from 1957.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. It's crazy to me that there was even access to equipment to be able to make a movie at that point.
When you get that church money, man.
Never underestimate the power of a potluck.
Praise be to Jesus.
Could you imagine showing this movie at a church after you made it?
I just think, like, you talk about wanting to be a fly, that's what I would want to be. Like, that the congregation was like, oh, the movie's out, let's go see it. And they did, and they're just like, the hell? I lost my religion today. There's just like, there is no God now. All because of you, Ed.
I mean, yeah, there are lots of starving children in Africa, but at least our money made this shitty movie.
Yeah. Oh, I feel bad.
Yeah, but so yeah, this one was quite the experience. There are so many things about it. We had talked a couple weeks ago about how you can kind of judge the impact of a movie by the size of its Wikipedia page. Mm-hmm. And the Wikipedia page for this one is just kind of amazing because it was a little bit of a disaster. And also there are just so many random things that kind of come together. Like, this was Bela Lugosi's last film, but he died. So they had to have stand-ins at some points for him, and they just got people that didn't even look like him. It's crazy. And so it was released after his death. And I don't know. There's a lot to go into. If you want to go deep on this movie, because it definitely has obtained cult status. So people have been intrigued about it and done research and then written about it and put it online. You can find so much info. But yeah, it was quite the experience, and I am excited to get into it with you.
Yeah, you know that there's some sort of religion based about this movie out there somewhere by all the stuff that you could see researching it.
Yeah. There's obsessions for sure. So, but yeah, before we get into it, I am going to do a quick introduction, and then we can get into the. You can't exactly say the aliens were wrong to not trust us with Solar Night details. In 1957, Distributors Corporation of America brought us Plan 9 from Outer Space, a science fiction horror movie written and directed by Ed Wood. The film tells the story of humanoid aliens from space who come to Earth to convince people to stop doing weapons research by making a few people rise from the dead. That's the best plot summary I could come up with. This movie is weird. Plan 9 from Outer Space was made on a budget of $60,000 or $40,000, which were provided by a Baptist church, apparently. More on that later. Anyway, it gained popularity and cult status after being named the worst film ever made in a book called the Golden Turkey Awards in 1980. It can currently be streamed for free with ads on Tubi.
You know, there wasn't too many ads.
Not at all. So yeah, the Baptist church thing. What I had copied from the internet was the movie was funded by a Baptist church, and in order to get it made, several cast and crew members had to be baptized before the funds were given to the production. This was because the film's original title, Grave Robbers from Outer Space, was deemed sacrilegious and offended the organization's religious and conservative sensibilities. But as was always the case with Ed Wood, he was willing to do anything to get his film made. Even getting baptized. I just can't. How did that conversation even start? Like, did he go to the church a few times to gain trust ahead of time, or did he just cold call him? Did he just walk in one day and he's like, "Look, I have this business proposition for you. I know that you people pass around a plate and it comes back with money in it. How do I get my hands on some of that?"
And I like to think that the person he was talking to with that was definitely like a creeper, like really creepy. And he kind of put his hands together and he said, "Let me ask you a question, son. How much is your soul worth to you?" And then Ed Wood responds back, $60,000. And he's like, "All right, I'll give it to 2 conditions. We don't make about grave robbers, and you get baptized." Shit, I'd do that for $60K.
Well, and Ed said, "What if we just change the title?" And he said, "Deal, as long as I still get that sweet, sweet soul of yours."
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you trade your everlasting soul for $60,000?
It's more than some people get.
I know. Oh gosh, that's such a gnarly. That's just cool as hell, man.
Yeah. This one was quite the trip. It had a very homemade feel to it. I mean, this did not feel Hollywood at all, and there were some things in it that I feel like worked really well, and some things that I feel like did not work well at all. But one of the things that I thought was good was how they used a narrator. And I hadn't really stopped to think about the fact that having a narrator makes it way easier to create a scene, because you don't have to mic it for sound.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah.
And you don't even have to write dialogue between the characters or anything. You just have a guy talking while people kind of act out what's happening. And so I thought that was actually a really good use here, because they could cover a lot of territory fast without exposing, you can barely hear what the actors are saying to each other, or this is going to be terrible acting and terrible dialogue or anything like that. Like, if you're going on a super, super low shoestring budget, it's kind of a good technique, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that, I definitely think you're onto it. I think if you're going to have a narrator, you should have it throughout the whole thing.
That would have made it more cohesive, yes. But what else about this movie would make you expect that?
Yeah. It's just Well, we started with it, man. We could also finish with it too. Like, that's not against the rules, but no, I couldn't agree more. Like, that's like the ingenuity that has to come. And one of the things I think I was kind of excited about though with this season was, we're DIYers. I feel like you and I we do it all ourselves. Just it's how we do it.
Yeah.
And we've been there when you're recording with a mic with a sock on it, because we don't have like the actual pop.
Right.
You do what you can, and you do it because, like, I don't know, you believe in it and you love what you're doing. And it was just like, I can never fault someone for getting their way, especially if it's not that malicious. And we all know that money wasn't going for anything good anyway, so might as well put it towards a movie. But I respect it, getting it done just to accomplish it. It's crazy how it all went down. But I will just
like in the Wikipedia page where it says, but as was the case with Wood, he was willing to do anything to get his film made. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, to be able to say, I have this idea for a movie that I want to make. I'm going to find a way to get enough money to make it, and then I'm going to adjust the way that I'm making it to work within that amount of money to get the film made. It's just like there's a determination to that, and also like a real-time kind of adjusting of expectations and plans that I think is a really powerful force. And if you apply that to like other domains of life, that's like kind of amazing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that anything, to extent, but most of the time, I'm willing to get behind someone that's willing to put that much effort into doing something that they believe in, unless it's like obvious things like Hitler. That's not going to happen. But for this, it's like, you want to make a film, man. Do the best you can. I will say with this film, I recently got a industrial sewing machine. Okay. And so I was like, I'm going to, like oil it and stuff while this movie's going, because I got to keep my hands busy. And I started, I maybe got like 10 minutes into it, and I had to stop because I was like, you're definitely not paying attention. Like, why are we dealing with like military guys now? Or, like I was just lost. And then, so I started it over without, doing any tinkering. And then I just realized, no, that's just the movie. Like,
and you were equally lost.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, am I watching the right film? Like, because I had never seen this before. And so I was just like, I don't know if I'm watching the right film, but I'm liking what I'm going to watch. So I'll just watch. If I'm not, I'll just watch the right one after. Yeah. But then I had that feeling, I had the realization, no, this is the movie, because I Googled it. But then I was at the point too where I was just like, I'm just going to keep it going. Let's just see where this takes us, figure out what happens next. But it's definitely not like three separate movies like I thought it was. Or it feels like three separate movies, but it's actually just one cohesive, or one not cohesive, but one film.
It really had some hard kind of jumps between ideas. And it was like you had these different things that were happening. So the one sort of storyline is that there are people being raised from the dead who are somewhat dangerous, lurking in the graveyard. There's this thing with the military and UFOs and how they're choosing to deal with the UFOs. And then there's the aliens and their completely unintelligible plan to convince the people of Earth to stop weapons development. But the way that they were going to do that was that they needed them to believe in the aliens, and the only way they could get them to do that was to raise people from the dead somehow. And I understand that the words that I just said don't make sense, but if you break those up into a thing that you're supposed to understand from a plot that's jumping around between those three things, good luck, buddy. It was rough.
Yeah. It was when the aliens or whatever they were in the UFO, when they were discussing, the initial plan. So the first time you see them and they're all discussing like what's going on, that was when I realized that I was watching the right film. Like, well, when I was like, okay, I see what's going on here now.
Well, I was confused why they interrupted their trip to the Renaissance Fair to go invade Earth.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
The costuming was just on point.
Yeah, they were like, they were saying, we tried to reach out. Basically, it comes down to the aliens being mad, saying we tried to reach out, being like saying like we don't like we're coming in peace or whatever. But like then you go to the American side or the human side, and like the first messages were just all scraggly because they hadn't like, I guess, like deciphered it or like had the equipment to be able. So like part of me was like, did they just not get the message? And are the aliens just pissed off thinking they did get the message and it's just been ignored? I don't know, but I don't know if I need to know. Like I was just like, regardless, they're pissed off. We better do something about it at this point.
Well, and then it was like the U.S. military won every engagement.
Technically.
It's like when the UFOs show up, they just shoot at them and then they go away.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, well, we have to show you how powerful we are. We're going to raise 3 random people from the dead. And then they're going to hang out, not say anything, in a graveyard. The only people that are in any danger is the one house whose patio opens directly into the graveyard for some reason.
It's just bad location at that point.
You just got to be a terrible school district.
Yeah.
But
it's like the world's ending. Well, kind of, but it's happening like on the other side of the world. It's like, I don't have to worry about it for a while. Then I'm going to be fine here. I could also have been one of the actors that was raised from the dead too. Just sit there with with your fucking long fingers, just looking creepy.
That stand-in for Bela Lugosi, keeping his face half covered with the cape.
Oh my gosh, I know. Yeah. And then they get up there. They get up in the UFO, and they're like, well, this is what we're doing. We're doing Plan 9. Let me show you the big guy. And they bring in this guy, and they're like, oh, he's gigantic, and he just looks. He looks creepy. His eyes are are covered or they're white or whatever, and it's just like the whole they create they in this film, in this universe, they have enough equipment to be able to travel light years, space travel, like all the above, and their weapon is just raising. Like they're down to Plan 9,
right?
It's just amazing.
I will say that I did delight in the practical effects of this movie. Like there's that scene early on where the pilots are flying and they see the UFO for the first time. And like that airplane cockpit was clearly made out of cardboard. Like they didn't really even try on the steering yoke. It was just a half circle of cardboard. And then you could see the string on the UFO.
Oh God.
And it was amazing. Like as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, I know exactly what we're dealing with here. And I am so here for it. But even like you were talking about the police officer that got raised from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he looked really convincingly creepy.
He really did.
He was like in zombie form.
Yeah.
And the same for the other two. And, costuming wise, that wasn't bad. Like they pulled off creating those creepy characters, I thought, really well. But you just kind of had to take it for what it was and accept. You had to suspend, like if you were looking for reasons that the movie was ridiculous, they're just everywhere. If you were looking for the reasons that the movie was entertaining, it was everywhere.
Well, see, yeah, I think that's so the difference is if we went all in on ridiculousness with this film, like if they go all in but they try to hide it, then that's when it, in my opinion, that's when it can be a problem, because it's like, yo, don't hide it. Like, you're doing it, just keep going. Like, this, in the grand scheme of things, like, film is just pretty much over the top no matter what story you're telling there. Like, you know, you always hear stories like, you know, maybe like a Navy SEAL, or like, you know, if it's a gang movie and gang members, like, that's not how it really is. It's like, well, no shit, what are they gonna do? Like, set on the corner of the block? You know, it's, of course it's not like gonna be exact portrayal, because real life isn't that exciting. You know, it doesn't happen that often. With this, it was just like, we're doubling down on how ridiculous this is gonna be, and that's a, you know, a thing I definitely respect. You know, it's just like, we're just here for it. And part of my struggle with this film really was like, you know, you talk about the UFO with the strings, like in you know, the movie we did last week, at the end of the film, they throw a knife and you see the string, like the knife glides along the string and it lands into the door. And so basically the same thing happened in both of these movies that we just watched. One of them frustrated me, and one of them I was just like, yes. And it's because the first, you know, the one last week was just was silly, but it was trying to be not silly. And with, you know, Plan 9 from Outer Space, it was just like, no, we're here for it. We're going to be as over the top as possible. That's totally cool that you got, you know. So because of that, it's totally cool that that's the case. That's the only thing I could think of, because I was definitely bothered by one and not by the other. Yeah.
No, I definitely would watch this movie 5 more times before I'd watch The Living Ghost again.
Yeah.
And it didn't make sense. It wasn't visually convincing, but it was a fun movie to watch.
Yeah.
And so something I kind of wanted to talk about with this one is just, I think we saw a big shift in the reason for making the movie. Like, I don't think that he was trying to sell this movie to a big Hollywood studio to pair alongside one of its feature films. I think he just really had this idea that he thought would be cool to make a movie of and set out to do it.
I see that. Yeah.
And so what we've seen is this, all right, we're this big movie house. We need to make 2 movies, but let's make one of them cheaper than the other. And then it's, okay, well, big movie houses will buy cheap movies to pair with their feature films. So let's churn those out as fast as we can so we can just pair them along. But at no point in there did the people behind why the movie was being made think that it was because exclusively, oh yeah, this movie is really worth making. Whereas I feel like this is the first one we saw where somebody was like, oh no, the world needs to see this. Like, I'm going to figure out how to make a movie.
Well, yeah.
and it's kind of, I feel like you can tell the difference.
Yeah. I think the other part of that too, like, you know, I don't remember what, I think it was early 50s when like the government kind of came down and it was like, yo, you major studios got it. I don't remember the exact timing. But I felt like the other change that this kind of made was just like, people saw this and they're like, yo, Ed Wood Jr. just put out this film that's, you know, crazy over the top. And the studio couldn't say no. And they're like, well, how? And they're like, well, he didn't get funding from him. He went through the Baptists.
Oh, so you're thinking this one may have been after the studios were no longer allowed to operate the theaters?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense, because I don't remember seeing anything about like a distribution company before. Whereas with this one, it was...
Yeah, 1948.
Okay, so this would have been after that, but it was Distributors Corporation of America. So this one actually had a distribution company that was responsible for getting it into the theaters, which isn't a thing that we've been seeing, you know, with these others. So that's at least as a separate entity from the major film studios.
1948 is when they ruled that basically split up the big five major studios, and so I don't think Ed Wood Jr. came up with the original idea, but all it takes is that one popular thing to happen, or the one unique thing to happen that has some steam to gain even more steam with people seeing it and being like, yo, we don't have to ask these douches in their suits at the studio if we can make this film. And now we have the Evil Dead, movies like, or even the Blair Witch, like things like that came out since then. And so I give him credit for that as well. It seemed, hopefully, that was the case. I don't know for sure. It just seems like it could be.
Well, that's like a big piece of the puzzle that I feel like just clicked into place in my mind, because I've been wondering for a while, like, how did we get from the era of like Poverty Row to independent films? Like, why did that take so long?
Yeah.
But it makes total sense if it's like, well, the major studios owned the theaters, so you had to go through them to get into the theater.
Right.
And when that wasn't the case anymore, there started being like independent distribution where you could make a movie, anybody could make a movie, and if they could get it picked up by a distributor, get it into theaters. And that's we talked in the very beginning about how a lot of times with horror movies, when you have limited resources, that sparks the most creativity.
Yeah.
And I think that like being outside of the Hollywood system is also a big contributor to that. Like, you can get these fresh ideas that don't have anybody that can say no. And a lot of times that's going to result in some really terrible movies. But for every 100 terrible ones, I bet there's a couple really good, creative, kind of groundbreaking ones there that aren't just, exercises in a genre that's already worn out.
Yeah.
And so this, I feel like, is a very unique movie, and I'm glad that it exists, even though the storyline is just damn unintelligible.
Yeah, very. But here's the thing. Like, now that I've seen it, and I can at least give the warning. Like, if you're watching this movie for the plot, I mean, it's like watching porn. You're watching it for the storyline? No, I don't care who says they are. It's not the case. Okay, we're not watching this for the storyline. We're watching this for the over the top that we got. That's the way I kind of see it.
Yeah.
And also, like, kind of tying in what you were saying, like, all there, not every terrible quality thing out there is just a whole pile of shit. There's definitely good pieces you could pick out, like some of our favorite After Effects or special effects are mine. Some of my favorite are just the over the top, like Savini special effects.
Yes.
That, and it's like, that would, I don't know his backstory. I'll never claim, but it's like, he didn't start at the very top. He kind of had to come from somewhere, and someone noticed that piece, and it may have came from a bad movie. It's just an example that I don't know if it's true or not, but there's a little bit of good and shit basically. And with this one, it's weird. It's like the universe kind of lined up where, like, even though the storyline is gnarly, and I legitimately enjoyed this film, and I don't know why. It's not necessarily. No, it definitely has things I enjoy.
Yeah,
but well, like,
it was unpredictable, and it was an adventure. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I ever felt scared in any of it, but it was entertaining in a way that The Living Ghost wasn't, because The Living Ghost had a bunch of stuff that was just annoying, and it felt like a worn out exercise in a genre that we've seen a billion other movies in.
Yeah. and you're sitting there watching it, and they're at the graveyard, and you're like, this is a high school play set that they're on. Like, you could just tell, you could almost see the edge of it, but you're just there for it. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, this is, and they use that scene, the graveyard scene a lot. And it's just like, this is made out of cardboard for sure. But we're here for it. We're going to do it. We're going to watch it.
Well, and someone cared enough about making that scene to use cardboard to construct it, because that was the only thing they had. Like, there's just, I don't know, there's a certain charm to it for me. I realize this is not going to be the movie for everybody, but this is definitely more consistent with what I had in my mind is like a B horror movie than anything that we've watched so far.
Yeah. And, to those people that don't enjoy this film, like, this might be able to change your mind. Fuck you.
Got him.
Last thing I have about this.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, you go first.
So the last thing I have about this, one of the things I think I actually did pretty well, and I don't know why. Oh, well, I know why with Bela Lugosi, because unfortunately the dude was dead. But like, one of the things I think it did well was, the dead that was risen, I'm going to call them zombies. There was not speaking, but it when you first see Vampira, which was the lady's name in the credits, that was creepy. She didn't do any talking. She literally kind of was just like a long, slanky thing, with really long looking fingers. And it was legit creepy. She was definitely watching from like the shadows kind of thing, like they didn't know she was there. And so it was, there's a little bit of extra sauce to it, but it was an example of like, you don't have to have dialogue. You don't have to have 100% of like a creepy looking character and good dialogue and like good makeup. And like, you don't have to have that for it to be creepy. And I think it was probably like not on purpose, but like, it was mission accomplished for me, where it was like, that's creepy as hell. Like, I don't care if you're at the graveyard or if you're at church, like that would be creepy to see regardless. And they don't have to say anything. They don't have crazy teeth or, it's just like, it was just the way that they kind of portrayed themselves. And it's almost like talking without. And, so
well, it was 100% operating within your boundaries.
Exactly. Yes. Imagine if they gave like her lines and like she's looking that creepy, and then all of a sudden she talks in like a Jersey accent or something. You're just like, yeah. You're not saying like, you're saying like, yeah. Boys, you want to go get some Dunkin' Donuts? It's like, go fuck yourself. I got a thing with Boston right now.
Last thing I had, wanted to dedicate this episode to my Uncle Norman. He was a big fan of not necessarily horror, but like old low budget sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
And I have some really positive memories of when I was a kid, watching some of those when we went to visit. And I feel like I just wish I could watch this movie with him. He was a really good dude and was a really positive influence, and I have lots of very good memories, and watching this movie and talking with you about it made me think about him, and that made me smile, so I thought I'd say something.
Well, hey, and here's the thing, the way you feel about Uncle Normie is probably going to be the way that my boy feels about Uncle Dammy, because you're going to be showing him these types of films. Like, that's what your job is.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like,
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, it's sad. Uncle Norm's like here, but however, you could keep the tradition alive. And if Norm is looking down on us right now, he's going to be stoked that you're going to be showing that to the crazy man out there.
Oh yeah. Keeping the legacy alive.
You got to. Yeah, you got to. It's, this is perfect time. Like, this is a perfect decade for it too. Like, for kids, I'll say. Like, I know that movie, obviously would have creeped my son out right now because he's turning 3 in a couple months. but when he's a little bit older, this would be fine. Like, but it's thinking like the movie Them with the ants. The big bug. Like that's those are the classic sci-fi horror films that it's just it fills the cracks of your heart. Not mine, yours.
That's true.
Peanut butter. That's what gets mine.
Your love language. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Do you think that there has been a time where we get like an artist or like a like a filmmaker or musician or something other than Daniel Johnston that like they come out and they make something different? So let's use music for example. They come out and they just make something really different. People are like, these lyrics are so like deep and everything, but really that artist is just mentally ill and people are just weird sheeps that they just follow, and they're just like, oh, he's like 3rd grade reading level and just writing poems still.
I thought you were going a totally different direction. I thought you were saying like, oh yeah, this guy who's writing all these lyrics about being depressed and how he has no hope in life and how everything's super dark and everything is like actually really suffering a mental health crisis. And this is a cry for help and someone should do something about it before Elliot Smith is found dead.
That's a better way of what I said. And I wish I could I was just thinking like, how stupid are people to follow some artists that are just really dumb. Not saying Ed Wood is, but I'm just curious if that's ever happened. Probably has.
They're called pop artists.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Sorry. That could probably be for the end. However,